EICMA 2022 that I've just spent a couple of days exploring may not have completely returned to its pre-pandemic glory days, but it does seem to be on the way to making a full recovery. And much credit for that should go to the Japanese manufacturers, who all made a decent fist of representing their brands. More than could be said for the likes of KTM and BMW, who were once again absent from the expo. I'm obviously not at the show anymore, and neither, equally obviously, am I down by the river for a more scenic backdrop, because I'm a lightweight biker and it's raining on and off, so I've retreated back to my van. Back to the Japanese manufacturers at EICMA. Both Kawasaki and Yamaha had big, impressive stands, though to be fair, neither of them had very much in the way of new models for us to drool over. But let's take a look at what was newsworthy for these big beasts from the East. Starting with Kawasaki, there wasn't a whole lot to shout about regarding updates to their existing model range, so I'm first going to direct your attention to their so-called go with green plans for the future, which it seems involve electric, hybrid and even hydrogen power plants much further into the future. Though given the cost and complexity of hydrogen as a fuel source, I wouldn't be that surprised to see this particular idea gradually fade away as time marches on. However, that's not to say that they're abandoning traditional petrol-powered bikes just yet. They most definitely aren't, and they promise 30-odd new gas-guzzling models before 2030, at least half of which should make it to the European market. So plenty of good old-fashioned Kawasaki fun to be had for a few years to come. Kawasaki had 3 of these new concepts on display. Actually, all 3 of them were more like production-ready models that will soon be available to buy. We've shown glimpses of these bikes on the channel before, the last being a very brief sighting of them being ridden past a photographer at the Suzuka 8 Hours race. Well, now we could at least have a closer look at them, although Kawasaki was still keeping a lot of the details about the power units and performance to themselves. It does seem that these models are just about ready to be sent down a production line and then shipped off to Kawasaki dealers. The EV and the ZEV both look remarkably normal, pretty much like any other Z or Ninja style Kawasaki model that uses an internal combustion engine. And it's that familiarity that may help some of us older, less enthusiastic electric power adopters to attempt the transition from our noisy, smelly gas guzzlers. Both of these models should, so Kawasaki says, be available sometime during 2023. Both also feature dual batteries for a total of 3 kilowatt hours of capacity, with both batteries being removable and rechargeable away from the bike. This portability also raises the possibility of the type of vending machine swaps that are becoming more prevalent across Asia, and certainly seem like an attractive way to alleviate a lot of the negativity around recharging times, though obviously this needs quite the significant investment in infrastructure to make happen. We have seen, though, recent agreements between certain competing brands regarding cooperation in terms of battery type and the infrastructure requirements of these swap vending machine things, and I'd expect to see a lot more of those sort of partnerships into the future. The third production ready prototype, shall we call it, that Kawasaki displayed was the hybrid EV that looked a little, how can I put it, awkward. It has some of that recognizable Ninja design, especially around the front end, but the packaging of both an internal combustion engine and battery power pack obviously presents some challenges because the wheelbase does look very long. Still, it isn't something that you'll have to wait too long for, because Kawasaki says it intends having this hybrid on sale sometime as early as 2024. Disappointingly, the little green men were not forthcoming with any more details about the model, other than it will be able to run on electric power only, as we would expect for the green zones of inner cities. Given the boost button that you could see on one of the handlebars, it also seems possible that the electric side of the power equation might also be available to give a little NOS-like boost to the combustion engine side of the bike when you fancy a little bit of extra performance, which I have to say would be very cool indeed. Kawasaki did also have some relatively minor tweaks of other models like the Ninja and H2SX and the middleweight Versys, but nothing really worth pointing a camera at. So let us move over to the equally large and impressive Yamaha stand, where most of the buzz seemed to be focused on the new GT Plus version of the Tracer 9 GT. Don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of the bike already. After all, I own the MT-09 myself, but I have to admit that I was going to say a bit disappointed. I was very disappointed that this was the biggest news on the Yamaha stand. What was I expecting? Well, more, obviously. I suppose, however unrealistically, I was hoping that Yamaha might spring a R9 and maybe even a T9 on us. By that, I mean, much like they've done with the MT-07, where they use the same ingredients to conjure up an adventure model, the T7 Tenere, and a fully fared sport bike, the R7, I was hoping they'd been busy behind the scenes using the ingredients of the MT-09, which include that fabulous engine, and made us a couple of juicy new models. Models, I would also suggest, that would have been warmly received and gone on to be great sellers. Still, easy for me to say from my journalist's armchair, so instead of those broken dreams, let me tell you about the Tracer 9 GT Plus. It's Yamaha's already good Tracer with as much technology thrown its way as Yamaha can muster. Remembering, after all, that after the demise of the FJR 1300, this is in fact Yamaha's biggest, poshest touring model. The 9 GT and GT Plus both get a host of tweaks to things like the handlebar switches, some refinement to the adjustment of the rider's seat height, and a new seat cover material, new smoked brake fluid reservoirs, a better pannier mounting system, a smoother quick shifter, a bigger rear brake disc, and revisions to the rear caliper, master cylinder, and the brake pedal itself. The really big news, though, concerns the new tech on the GT Plus model, where we now have adaptive cruise control, and with that a unified braking system that is a first for a production motorcycle. The adaptive cruise control is, as you'd expect, able to maintain a set distance, adjustable by you between one of 4 increments, to the vehicle ahead of you. This is the same Bosch sourced technology that we've seen on Ducati and KTM's top touring models, but obviously now made available at a lower price point, and Yamaha has even added some extra features. The radar works out what the car ahead is doing, and then via the ride-by-wire throttle either accelerates or engine brakes to maintain the correct distance. If that isn't enough, it can now gently use the brakes via that unified braking system to maintain a safe gap to the vehicle that you've latched onto. It will do this at any speed between 30 and 160 km an hour, which seems like a pretty useful range, and for the first time the system will also allow you to use the quick shifter to change gears without actually disengaging the system. You might want to use that if the traffic, for instance, gradually slows down while you're in a tall gear and then suddenly accelerates away quickly, or gives you the opportunity to perform an overtake, and then you can just bang down a gear to help you get decent acceleration, but otherwise let the bike stay in its, shall I call it, semi-autonomous following mode. The new braking system can also chime in to increase your braking pressure if it deems that a collision is imminent, but it will only add to your existing braking pressure that you're already applying, rather than suddenly deciding to brake on its own when you're not expecting it. This system can also be turned off completely, or when left on, it can also help out by more accurately balancing the effects of front and rear brakes while cornering. It sounds like it's the sort of system that needs a closed, very safe environment to examine more closely, but anything that helps out with safety without, and this is the key point, without interfering in a rider's decision making or ultimate control of the bike has got to be worthy of consideration. To help you control all this extra tech, there is a new 7-inch TFT screen that has comprehensive smartphone connectivity via USB, Bluetooth, or even Wi-Fi. You can now also get via a Garmin app and your smartphone a full screen display of your navigation, which is always a nice addition. Lots of tech undoubtedly means lots of extra price, but news of that will have to wait. Yamaha was not forthcoming with any details other than to say they'll be making some announcements in December. Other than that, the only other updates really worth mentioning are the changes to the Tenere 700 that were actually needed to keep it competitive in a class that seems to sprout capable new entrants on a weekly basis these days. Most noticeable is the funky new portrait mode 5-inch TFT screen that replaces the dated LCD display. You get two display options, one called Street that is road oriented and an off-road biased version that is known as Explorer. The ABS gets some modernisation to keep up with the Joneses in that you can now turn it off on the rear wheel, much like you can on just about every other adventure bike in the middleweight class. And now the Tenere comes prepared as well for a quick shifter that can be specified as an option. You may be annoyed that this is not standard given what the other manufacturers are doing, but you may also be pleased that they haven't automatically included it and consequently bumped up the price accordingly. There are some other minor tweaks as there are to the Tracer 7 GT and to the 3-wheel Nikon, but otherwise that was it from the Yamaha team. Check out our other videos from EICMA to see what's been going on with the other manufacturers, big and small. And that will be it from me for this one. See you in one of the others.